This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Today on the show, I have Dan Andrews. Dan runs a very popular podcast called Tropical MBA.com. I think you'll enjoy this. Something a little different, and we actually did this in person in Saigon, but fun stuff. Enjoy. So, I like this phrase that you use, this location independence.
Is this you interviewing me right now?
Of course. This
is cool.
Location independence entrepreneur. I think if I was wise enough, I would have invented that statement. I've pretty much lived it for a long time.
Yeah.
So where'd you hit that from?
It wasn't me. I think I stole it from a woman named Leah Woodward. She started a domain called locationindependent.com. And this is kind of this phenomenon that happened right on the back of the 4-hour work week, which is, I mean, of course, for wealthy people, the idea of sort of being wherever you want is, been there, done that. But for the working classes, I mean, that this is a revolution that you could actually earn a living wage and do it from anywhere on the planet. So location independence is the term that's sort of been used to describe that.
What does it mean to you?
Well, to me, I think one of the things that we all want in life is some sort of kind of freedom. We want freedom to do the kinds of things we are passionate about. We want the freedom to be able to buy the kinds of things or be around the types of people we love. So, for me, location independence is just the opportunity to see the world. Growing up, that was like my biggest dream. Like sitting in an office, working at a cubicle, like that was the lament in the back of my mind. Like, man, I'd really love to be out there in the world. Even if that's just at a cafe down the street, I'm still come from that, middle class where going to a dentist appointment, during the middle of the workday is a big deal. 2 weeks a year, for Americans is the average. And it's stressful to go on vacation, in particular in the age of the technology age, because your phone's still buzzing, your suppliers are still yelling at you, and you're still responsible for your job duties. So, I think, people are waking up to that and, they're looking around and saying, maybe I don't need to do this anymore. Maybe the very technology that's ruining my vacations could put me on permanent vacation. And that's sort of the movement that I'm interested in.
You talk about freedom. So I can think about and you grew up in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah.
So I grew up in Northern Virginia, and I've watched it go from kind of sleepy suburban government town to very, very wealthy government town. And, those people, they think they've got it all great. The schools are fantastic. They got a ton of money. They're shopping at the malls. I mean, looks like freedom to them, doesn't it? What kind of freedom are we talking about? They got the freedom to buy a Range Rover. They got the freedom to shop at Nordstrom's. What kind of freedom are you talking about? What kind of freedom am I living? What kind of freedom are we talking about?
I like, there's this idea that cash isn't the only currency in the world, right? You can also, pay people and so you could pay people in time. You could pay people in mobility. You could pay people in experiences. It's like a sunshine tax. Like if your job is great, like if you're a tour guide in the Grand Canyon or whatever, you're going to get paid very little cash. So these currencies work as a system. And, if you're going to optimize for cash and income, say live in Northern Virginia and get a government job, you're going to sacrifice both time and mobility. So now if you were to reduce the amount of cash that you require, because a mortgage in Northern Virginia, as you know, is incredibly cash intensive. Get yourself out of that. Then you can maximize for time and mobility. And I think that's what a lot of people are starting to do in our communities. They're saying, you know what? Why am I optimizing for income? If I had more time and more mobility, I could say, come to a place like Saigon where my cash goes a lot further. And that's kind of an interesting way of thinking about it as a system. Would you rather make $4,000 a month here in Saigon or $12,000 a month, but have to stay in Northern Virginia the entire year? I mean, there's another thing that, we're looking for as entrepreneurs is to maximize our opportunity field. So now all of a sudden I don't have to sit in an office all day. I don't have to have a commute anymore. I don't have to be in one location. So I can be here in your living room meeting with you about opportunities. There's an incredible upside potential there to getting that time and mobility back. So one of the things that we advocate is basically reduce your cash requirements ASAP. That's the ground zero of entrepreneurship is personal finances. And if you can reduce the amount of income that you need, I'm nervous all of a sudden, man. People don't interview me very often.
And I'm not all there either. So like you're having to sit here and talk to someone who's not all there. It's actually my first, I've done plenty of interviews in person, but this is the first interview that I've done in Saigon and the first interview that I've done for my podcast, episode 151. No, actually 152, in person, I believe. I think they've all been done via Skype. Actually, you know what? Mike Aponte, guy who was the MIT blackjack team leader, that was in person.
Oh yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll dream up another one that was in person. So as we talk about this, though, first off, let me take a step back because I did not.
What's interesting here for you?
I didn't do this at the beginning, and I want to make sure the audience knows from where you have come to where you are now. So, early to mid 30s, and you are an entrepreneur now. You are in quote the tropics. You are in Saigon. You are wherever you want to be, and you're making a living, right? And look, in my world, I talk to people about trading. But the reality is the only reason people are doing trading is because they want the freedom and they want the money. So I really don't, and I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So I don't really care what you do to try and figure out a way to get ahead. If you want to take some of my advice, I can help you out on some of the trading information, but there is a world of different ways that one can be an entrepreneur. And of course, there's another half of my life where I'm teaching people. I'm helping to educate people. That is an entrepreneurial business. I could sit here and give a tremendous amount of insights as to being running an entrepreneurial business since 1996, all online. So
yeah, we all want to hear it. By the way, I mean, you were talking on Reason TV. I saw a video where you were talking about the new security is getting back to basics and putting up the lemonade stand.
Absolutely,
that's what we're talking about here.
Absolutely, but you outline because you'll get me next week. So
I'm much more comfortable asking the question.
You outline. I want to know. So, what were you doing and I haven't asked this. I used to do this at the beginning of all my interviews. Haven't done it for a while. So, what were you like as the 13-year-old male Dan? I assume in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So,
what were you doing at 13?
I was
good kid, bad kid,
completely average. I would say. I mean, just a really boring guy from a boring family. Nobody does anything except work at the same place for 25 straight years, if they're lucky. Okay. And that was terrifying to me. I had no idea how I was going to get out of that, but I knew that it was terrifying. I knew that.
Was it a gut level thing that you felt?
I saw the way my father's career went, and it wasn't good. He
put some color to it without being too personal. Put some color to it. What did you emotionally feel by watching his career?
A sense of that he couldn't control it. At a certain point, he had invested in something that was pulled out from under his feet, and I just thought he believed in that his whole life, and then to have it be taken away. That career, that industry went away. And he didn't have the skill set or the flexibility to be able to really do anything about it. And so he really took a huge step back sort of in the prime of his working career and has sort of had to be stuck there. And that really put a chip on my shoulder about, well, okay, that's all fine and great if he was doing something he's passionate about. If he were an athlete or a teacher or something like that. He was working in what I saw as a pretty crappy job, but doing it because he thought it was going to be the right thing to do. And I mean, I don't want to take anything away from him. It ended up being the right thing because he educated his kids and all of that. I mean, it was wonderful, but I just thought, I'm not going to live that life. That's not for me.
So the fear of seeing that for you said, I am willing to sacrifice all the quote traditional steps that people take to move through life. And you said, I've witnessed firsthand somebody who followed all the traditional steps, trusted the system, and then at whatever age, 45, 50, 55, 60, rug pulled out. And that emotionally for you is enough to say, I'd rather sacrifice on the front end and not have all the things where my friends are going, hey, what kind of job do you have? Where are you with your family? It's so you were willing to sacrifice that because you didn't want the back end to be bad.
I wish that I would have been that smart, but it didn't really work out that way. So what ended up happening was that I fell into the middle class traps. But I had the chip on my shoulder. I think that was the important part.
The chip of what?
I think I knew that I wanted to get rich. I knew that I needed to get free. There was some drive there where
you're admitting to wanting to get rich. Hold on. This is not an appropriate admission.
Isn't that a weird thing?
No, of course I have the same admission too, but it's not a legal admission in polite talk.
It's not. Tim Ferriss says something wonderful, which he says, people don't want to be millionaires. They want the types of experiences that they feel like only millionaires can have. So maybe it wasn't just rich. It was this idea of being wealthy in every respect. I didn't want to have the same life every single day for 25 years. I wanted to be able to take my mom to Paris. I wanted to be able to take a month off of work. I wanted to be able to write a book. Those are things that you need to be wealthy to do those things. And
so get back to that 13-year-old Dan.
Sure. Yeah. Back to that.
His eye lead you around in circles to every which way but loose.
This is a depressing interview for me. Going back and reflecting on desperate Dan. I did a lot of like these kinds of ideas where I thought, oh, maybe I'll be a rock star, or maybe I'll be a philosopher, or just these really out there kinds of ideas that, I don't know, were sort of fantasies to me. But then when I looked out at the spectrum of real opportunities, it was always the business guys. And that was a real rub for me because growing up, I sort of thought, I didn't think business was cool. I didn't think guys who ran companies were cool guys. There wasn't this whole entrepreneurship generation back then, It was either, the business icons that were out there weren't inspiring to me at that time. Because I looked up to people that were artists, writers and stuff. And I think what you're seeing with this entrepreneurial revolution is you're seeing that the artists are emerging. You can build something that you love and that other people love and become extremely wealthy through that kind of action. So it's not just a matter of arbitrage or optimization or becoming a corporate tycoon. Now you can make money from your art, which to me is a revolution. The fact that I can say this is true. There's never been a better time on the history of the planet to make money from your writing. And as a kid in my high school yearbook, I wrote, what are you going to be doing in 10 years? I wrote writing a bestseller. And I was not able to fulfill on that promise, but I am making a living from my writing, which to me just is, and I have many, many friends who are doing the same. So that to me is the revolution that I want to be a part of. And that's been incredible for me.
What was the first step? What was the first dollar you made as an entrepreneur? As an entrepreneur, not being employed by somebody, but the first dollar that you knew came in from you putting your butt on the line to you saying, here, audience, here is my product, here's my service, here's my something, buy it from me. And the first dollar came in, and how did you feel? When was it and how did you feel?
Okay, so let's tell a little story about Dan breaking the law. I put up a website. I believed that the valet parking industry had these really outdated equipment. And we thought that we could manufacture a better piece of equipment. So I manufacture valet parking equipment, which is completely random. Back in the day, I was a SEO specialist. So I would look at weak niches on Google and see, are there expensive products where the marketers, they don't know how to rank their websites on Google? I might be getting overly technical here, but I was doing all this research and I was like, man, the valet parking niche is soft. We can go in there. And so what I did was I photoshopped a picture of this equipment and I wrote a sales page with a different value proposition. And I said, hey, I'm going to make equipment that does all this, but ships in 24 hours and has a lifetime guarantee and all this. It's $600 for my key box. And I put the sales page up and I started running an AdWords campaign to it. And I remember the day I was sitting at the Cantina, which has a beautiful brunch in Pacific Beach, San Diego. And I'm sitting there with my business partner dreaming about all the riches that are going to come our way. And it turned out to be an incredible slog for 6 years, but we thought we were onto something. And when I got that PayPal notification that said somebody had sent me $600 because of a value proposition, not even a product, just a value proposition that I put out there on the net, said, hey, you pay me $600, I will deliver this podium to you. That was still in development. So that's the admission there. But I gave him his money back. But what did it feel like? It felt like freedom. It was a revolutionary moment for sure. The idea that you don't need to opt into somebody else's context in order to create value for the world. You don't need to apply to a job to be employed. You can employ yourself by writing your own script. And that was really the first time that I stepped out and did something big like that. So yeah, I think that was 6 years ago.
Yeah, but to get off the fence, so to speak, to move from the place of dreaming, as you and I have talked about before, every time I tell somebody that I've written a book, I don't walk around telling that to people regularly, but
I'll get you a t-shirt so you don't have to.
but people always say, oh, I want to write a book too. You know, I've not seen too many people. I've seen a handful over the years that have probably been inspired by knowing me and saying, well, shit, if Mike can do it, I can do it.
It is inspiring. Absolutely. I think it's one of people's biggest dreams. You know, there's these sort of fundamental, people want to express themselves. That's the magic of the internet, right? Is that you can write your book and you can use it to build a platform for yourself. But people also have that travel dream. I think that's sort of a very universal idea as well. And I don't know. I think that's why I'm so fired up about this stuff, because it's absolutely the case that for someone with my background 20 years ago, I wouldn't be having this conversation. It was, the internet and stuff like this that allowed me to scrape up that sales page and run an ad campaign and all this kind of stuff. So it's a revolution.
I'm going to jump around on you because my brain doesn't go in straight lines. But I have a thought, and let's see if I can phrase this correctly. So I was watching a show on CNN today with Sanjay Gupta, and he was talking about medical marijuana and the benefits to this little girl that was having seizures and just the struggles that her parents were having to go through to get her to be able to use this medical product. And then he kind of shifted gears and he went to an artist who was painting these great paintings, and he was making a ton of money. And the artist was basically like, look, I use marijuana to put myself into a different, let me add here real quick. I'm very libertarian. I don't care if you smoke pot or not. That's the whole point. It's not pot. You'll see where I'm going. So, but he was saying that I use it because it kind of brings me down, calms me down a little. I'm less critical of myself. And that got me thinking about what has happened to me being over here, being over in Southeast Asia, being in Asia. And so while you and I both might have had this dream or this vision at some stage about saying, hey, let's just leave the continental 50 and let's just go. We both happen to have ended up in Asia. So this whole long drawn out question though is to get you to think about, something actually different happens to you here when you get here, different than what you thought the dream might have been. It does something to you. It recharges you in a different way. It does something subtly different to you. It brings you a different perspective. It's almost calming, like the artist was talking about smoking pot. In some ways, for me, being in an entirely different atmosphere is calming and frankly, more creative, more inventive, more imaginative. You said, hey, I want to go. I'm going to go travel the world. Now you're here. Don't you see also that it's affected you differently than you ever imagined?
Absolutely. I don't even know where to begin with this.
One of the
things I was reading about, I've always idealized this age of Paris in the 20s. And this idea that all these, beautiful writers went to the most beautiful city and created all these books and stuff. And it was interesting. I was reading about that time period and I realized, or I learned that the reason they were all there is because of currency arbitrage. In fact, it was one of the cheapest places for them to live at the time, and they could extend their creative runway. And so, if you're reading about it in a magazine that's written by a 27-year-old kid that went to a mid-level university in the United States about what's hot scene, you're too late. And so I do think that there is a creative explosion happening in this country, in this area of the world. And being here on the ground, being a part of that, yeah, it's inspiring. And it's not written about in the magazines yet. or whatever, the top 25 hottest tech startup cities, whatever. Who knows how they judge that stuff? Everybody knows that's not real. That's not the vibe. So I think there's a great vibe here. And yeah, I do feel that. It also, it's classic. It changes your context. It's really easy to sort of get into a mode of like, oh, this is normal. And then you come here and like nothing's normal. So you really have to like figure out what it is that you believe. And so, yeah, man, I feel it's fantastic
subtle.
culture.
It's subtle. It's hard to put your finger on what exactly it does to you, but it does something different to you, at least in my opinion, than maybe what I would have imagined before I left.
We're trying to write our own scripts. Like I'm going to come to you and say, Michael, what's going to happen 5 months from now? And you're going to be like, I have no idea what's going to happen 5 months from now. You got posed that same question back home. People know the script. They know where they're going. They know what's happening. You walk up to the random person on the street here. Everybody's an entrepreneur. Everybody's switching. This place 5 years ago was a completely different place. These people know change. And I think that that's kind of interesting. That's sort of the stuck in the mud feeling sometimes you get back home, is this idea that people feel like they've opted into this system, this way that life's supposed to be. And in a big way, we found out that that's not going to work out for us anymore as a country. And I think we're still dealing with that. We're still hungover from that, and here people are just over it. Like they know that things aren't going to be the same 5 years from now. And so, you see even simple things like the way people manage money here. People know how to manage money in Asia. My family, nobody knows how to manage. People know how to manage credit card balances. So
yeah, it's funny. You talk about the entrepreneurism here, and we happen to be in Saigon today. At my residences the other day, I was recording something. I was down on the first level, and these girls saw me recording something. And I said to one of them, I said, hey, can you just introduce my guest here and just do it in Vietnamese for me? And she looked at me and you would have thought typically this would be like, hey, just sure, whatever. Give me the mic. I'll do it for you, whatever. 5 seconds. She looked at me and she said, how much you paying me? So, you got to appreciate it. So listen, let me jump in. I'm going to keep bouncing around on you, but what you have morphed to from the valet parking is you basically have a story to where you got inspired to looking to connect with other people. And I think it was through a want ad. And this want ad has ultimately led to your Tropical MBA podcast. But why don't you walk it through the step of essentially how you started? I think your value add, and I think I relate to this because I do this as well, is connecting people and building a community and bringing people together, like-minded people, even though that wasn't your plan. It wasn't my plan either. It wasn't your plan. It just kind of happened. And so why don't you lead that story through to where you currently are today?
All right. So one of my biggest tropes, and that if you ever come and hang out with me someday, I'm probably going to get on your case about not having a blog. And it's not the idea that you need to be putting up blog posts or have WordPress or all that. It's about telling your story. There's never been a better opportunity. People need stories. They want stories. They want people to follow, ideas. And so that's something when we started our business, we weren't coy about it. It was a personal revolution for us to learn about entrepreneurship. And we weren't shy about going out and telling people about it. Here's what we're doing. Are you doing the same thing? Let's hang out. Let's share ideas. Because back in San Diego, if you're a bootstrapping entrepreneur, it's a pretty lonely crowd. You go out to meetup.com events and they're awful. There's a bunch of guys named Toby shoving their business cards down your throat. Telling you about a fantastic new business opportunity that they have or something. These aren't entrepreneurs. And so we needed to find other people like us. And part of that is putting your story out there so other people can find you. So at the beginning, I guess it was probably, we were about 2 years into the business and we had a few employees and we were cash flowing and everything. I thought, man, let's put on the microphone and let's share what we learned and even simple little things that are mundane aspects of our business might help one other person start a business. And, for a year, I podcasted to 40 people and people are always like, how did you do that? Why, and I thought, man, that's 40 more people than ever listened to me before. And it's a great privilege to be able to talk to a room full of people every day and share your experiences. And then you get the feedback and you build relationships with purpose. And I think this is great for personal network, but it's also great for I think the opportunity to grow a business nowadays is to build your business in front of your customers and to allow them to be a part of that That's marketing. And this whole idea of interrupting people on the television or in a magazine ad, it's over. Attention is limited now. So if you want people to care about your business, you have to make it a business worth caring about. And part of that is telling a story with your business. So that's what we're trying to do with everything that we create nowadays is it's got to be a meaningful, businesses are social movements. They are a catalyst for change in people's lives. And this, if you can make it a story worth being a part of, then no need for TV commercials.
Let me walk you through this. So this is partly my experience, but I have a feeling you've had a similar experience. When you launch something completely out of whole cloth, blank slate, you just put up a website or you launch a podcast, there's nothing there. And then, as you said, you get the feedback, and then the feedback, you make a change. And the change might be what the public can see, but that feedback also changes you. Mm-hmm. And so there's this iterative process that goes on over months, years, and it just keeps building. And before you know it, you, and I know myself too, have got a perspective not only about the content that you're into, but how it all fits together, all the pieces fit together. And where I'm going with this is it's what people really need to understand is you have to start. Because this is where I'm going with this, is you have to start. Because if you're sitting back and you're thinking to yourself right now, oh, this guy, Dan Andrews, he's got a cool business. I think I can just go copy that business. Or, oh, this guy, Mike Covel, he's got a cool business. I'm just going to copy it. And look, I've seen people literally write books and just throw the word trend following in it or do it with websites. And what they don't realize, it's the little iterative steps. You might think that you can kill me. You might think that you can co-opt me. But the reality is I'm not defeatable unless you put a bullet between my eyes because I'm Mike. I'm going to be who I am. You can't just copy it. And you can't copy Dan Andrews. So what people need to I want them to be able to take from listening to you today, start, number one, yes, and start learning that iterative process, getting all those little lessons. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be tough to wake up, as you mentioned with your dad. It's tough to wake up at 55 and say, I'm going to start this whole process. Because it is something where time is your enemy. You have to start.
There is this element of, people would prefer to be in the wood shop, cooking up their plans and getting it polished and getting it right. And I think the great entrepreneurs that I've met, they're people that are willing to ship. They're people that are willing to put things in front of people and make an impact in people's lives. And you're not always going to be ready. And you're not always going to know all the implications of what's going to happen if you put your product in somebody's hands. But you got to get there. Yeah, you got to ship. It's tough.
What about this iterative process though? I mean, are you able to even look back anymore and say, who was Dan 5 years ago versus who is Dan today? Are you able, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can look back and know who the other guy was. I don't even know who the other guy, I'm not sure I know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I'm not sure that I'm that much different. My life is much different. I have a lot more freedom, a lot less anxiety. I remember what it was like before the business. I was worried a lot and that sucked. And so that's the biggest thing that's changed. Doing things at scale has changed. It's interesting when you have a platform, when you say something and thousands of people listen instead of one. And I think that's the responsibility of people who want to be entrepreneurs is you have to help a bunch of people. So, I have products and content and all kinds of things that are out there right now helping people solve their problems. And that's what it comes down to if you want to become wealthy. Or, I don't want to say that's the only way to become wealthy, but it certainly is a great way to get wealthy is to put things out there in the world that are impacting thousands of people. And if you want to impact thousands of people, you got to get started ASAP. It's going to take some time.
People might think they might be sitting back this kind of builds on the other thing I just said, but maybe they're like, well, trendfollowing.com or tropicalmba.com. And what they don't really realize is these names and these brands, they're just representative of the relationships that you and I have with people all around the world.
That's
and
true.
So your brand really is you.
That's true.
And it's your relationships.
It's what you're going to say about me when I leave the room, something awful, I'm sure. But that's the idea. Yeah, it's the nature of how you interact with people. So if you present yourself in relationships as someone who's willing to lead people, who's willing to help them, who's willing to help solve their problems, then that's something worth scaling. And I think it's important to, especially at the beginning, there's this idea where like, well, who am I? Maybe you feel like a fraud at the beginning. Like, I've had friends who came to me, maybe really rich guys. I have a rich friend who's like, why are you teaching people about business? And, you only have this little business, you're nothing like my business. And I was like, well, because you're not stepping up to do it. Because, I'm the guy who stepped up and said I was willing to do it. And everybody has that opportunity in their life, and it's always going to be a little bit nerve wracking at the beginning. Sometimes I publish a podcast and I still kind of like slap my face and say, oh man, I feel like an idiot I don't know if that's right. I think putting yourself out there, that's what it takes.
Yeah. I basically forget what I say the moment I turn the recorder off.
Well, you actually know what you're talking about. There's a difference between me and you.
So I like something that I've seen you say also too, which is, and this is my entire motivation to get started as an entrepreneur, to get started in business. And it's really what I help people with, which is, if that guy does it, why not me? It's like Anthony Robbins 101. And I've written about this in my books. And that was actually inspiring to me. I still remember early 1990s reading an Anthony Robbins book, and it was a story about Steven Spielberg. And Spielberg was on Universal's lot, sneaking in as a teenager, watching how movies got made. And once he saw how they did it, once he saw how they made the soup, boom, light bulb went off. And it basically told him he can do it. Now I had the thought that I can do it before I even knew how the soup was made. Were you like that too? Before you even knew how it was made, did you have the thought you can do it too?
No, I thought that successful and talented people were magical. And this is the most important. So anybody, young person listening to the podcast, the most influential lesson, if I could go back and feed it to myself earlier, was that talent it means something, but hard work is a lot more important. And being in the game, having the right relationships and repetition. So, the best guitar players in the world, I used to think that there was this thing called musical talent, and that was something that you got in the womb. And so in particular, with my kind of really average central Pennsylvania upbringing, I would look to guitar players and be like, wow, Randy Rhoads is so talented. Wrong. Randy Rhoads played the guitar every single day for 15 years. And that's why he does that. And that's a lesson that took me a long time to learn. Even with writing, which was something that I loved, reading books and everything. And I thought writers were like writers. No, writers are people who strap themselves to a damn chair 4 hours a day and they write words. And I wish I knew that lesson when I was 14 years old and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. I was just waiting for something to happen to me. It's like lottery ticket mentality. Just waiting for an event, whereas really it's a process. And when I became an entrepreneur, it was like, I'm going to stop applying for stuff and I'm going to start creating things to apply to. I'm going to stop consuming things and I'm going to start producing things. It's a process. It's not boom, someone dropped a big bunch of money on my plate. It's just a process. You decide to live a different way. So yeah, man, I wish I could go back to young Dan and say, Randy Rhoads, he's very special and everything, but he just plays the guitar all the time. Is Randy Rhoads the right guy?
Yeah, I love Randy Rhoads. I should play. Steve, insert some Ozzy right here. Actually, we'll have to do that.
I do think, guys like Ozzy and Randy, they've got inclinations, and you have to understand what your inclinations are. You can't put a square peg down a round hole, So I think, but that's part of experimenting when you're young. Try a bunch of different things, but man, it was really magical for me when I found out that I could write every day and I could sit down and crank. And that was a game changer. And it's taken years. I've been writing for over 10 years and I still suck at it. But it's brought me a lot that I've decided to start producing and just stop consuming, waiting for something magical to happen to me.
Insert 2 books for everyone to go read. The Talent Code and Talent is Overrated.
Yes.
Both right in the headspace of where Dan was going there.
And then when you're done with that, pick up The War of Art, which is about overcoming everything. When you want to be an entrepreneur or a writer or an artist, everything in your life conspires to keep you away from that because it's ultimately scary. You're putting yourself out there to be judged. And that's a struggle. And that book frames it up very nicely. And all the good things in life come from facing down that fear, I think, and putting yourself out there and extending yourself and committing to things. And so, yeah, that's a big theme in my life right now. As you know, I'm trying to finish my book, and if you want to hate yourself, just take on a book project, because I don't know how you do it, Michael.
For me, at least the way I've done it so far, deadline. And if I don't meet the deadline, I fail. I don't plan on failing. That's the secret.
It's beautiful.
You mentioned two things I should also interject as we were talking about resources people should check out. You've mentioned the idea of entrepreneurs just shipping and art. And I know some of your influences are similar to my influences, and that sounds very similar out of the Seth Godin cookbook. And so everyone that's listening, if you haven't already discovered the blog of Seth Godin and some of his books, I think you've just got to check that out. Even if you don't buy one of his books, his blog is gold.
Absolutely. It's required reading. Purple Cow and Linchpin would be good places to start on those issues.
Yeah, I definitely Linchpin. I tell people that are interested in trend following, well, people come at me and they get all fixated. I had a guy the other day, he emailed me, and he had bought some training from me, and then he put my stuff down. Then he went for some get rich quick crap, and then he lost all his money. And now he comes back to me and he's asking for trading advice. And all I said to him is, dude, maybe you should stop the trading part and let's go to the psychology part. Why don't you put the money making down, and why don't you look inside for a little while and stop worrying about making the dollar, and maybe start worrying about why you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off first.
Absolutely. When you ask any entrepreneur, it's always your mindset that's the biggest issue. Because look, there's so many resources, there's an incredible amount of abundance. If you want to get something done, you can get it done. What's holding you back is generally something, a self-belief, a limiting idea about yourself. Man, I used to listen to guys like Anthony Robbins when I was a young punk and think, that's gotta be bull. You can't just have a healthy mind and be successful, And the more I get down this road, this journey, the more I look to people like that and realize that the mindsets are so critical. And what I didn't understand is that it doesn't just happen right away. I mean, a couple of days of eating vegetables and having positive thoughts is not going to make you wealthy. It's something that you have to implement over a long haul. And I think it's the people that I'm seeing at the success tables. Those are people that are masters at self-control and self-discipline and self-improvement and continual iteration. And so that's why I do read a lot of that kind of stuff nowadays. I think it has a big impact on me.
But, reminding myself, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think you take in the information, you take in the insights from some nice minds out there, but you don't strike me as a follower. And I know I'm not much of one myself. And I'm not much for one to kind of look at the wall and say, how many guru names do I have on the wall? And have I figured out how to bow down to them and do whatever? But there are some folks out there that they think entrepreneurship is about how many conferences they can attend, how many groups they can join, how many people that they can share thoughts with. And the reality is this entrepreneur stuff is all about solo. It is about jumping without the parachute. It's not about jumping holding your friend's hands. I mean, ultimately, you can take in all these insights from all these other people and you can be inspired. And I sure as hell have been. But it's not about friends and family. I mean, you got to do it. You have to do it.
You got to cut the cord, right? And it's also very difficult because oftentimes friends and family won't be particularly supportive. Nobody was supportive of my entrepreneurial leap. Nobody. Actually, one guy, his name's Bob, and I remember his birthday every year. People just, they wanted the best for me and they were concerned. They see entrepreneurship classically in our culture is framed up as this risk, this giant risk, Oh my gosh, you're going to go out there, you're going to, I don't know, you're going to spend all your money and it's like a dice game. I don't see it like that at all. I don't think that's the branch of entrepreneurship that I'm interested in or care about or represent. For me, it's about the opportunity to create things that solve other people's problems that are valuable and do a value exchange. Put up your lemonade stand, and it doesn't need to be risky. So that to me, I mean, I don't feel like I ever made a giant risk here. I got a bank loan. If I couldn't have paid it back, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. I made sure that customers had expressed interest with their credit cards before I bought my inventory. And so I don't know, how risky is that really? What's the risk? I think the real risk is the emotional stuff. Well, the risk is I'm going to have to go to Christmas for the next 3 years trying to explain this to everybody. Or I'm going to have to be the black sheep in the family. People really didn't know what I did and they didn't think it was cool, because it's not legible to them. And that's by definition, by the way, right? Because if it was legible, it would be a job. I mean, it's a new opportunity. It's entrepreneurship. You're creating something. So how can somebody that has no interest in entrepreneurship just sit across from the table at a Thanksgiving from you and understand? So I feel like if you're sitting around the dinner table trying to convince people about what you're doing and why it's a good idea, you're at the wrong conversation. It's the wrong table.
Yeah, I can remember back to fielding those kinds of questions, and I really didn't mind being a black sheep. I kind of grooved off it. But I remember you'd hear the questions and they'd look at you and they'd be sizing you up and they'd be looking at you through that prism, that lens of like, don't you want to be like me, working for the government, fatter than a house, smoking, drunk, probably going to be dead in about 10 years? Don't you want to be like me? And, you could never really say anything. You just have to kind of look at them and smile and go, yeah, great. That's wonderful. I can't, wow. You go to work every day. You're in 2 hours of traffic every day. And you sit in a little cube and you have a little refrigerator under your desk. You get some snacks under there. Oh, I can't be like you. Is that what you're telling me? Really? Really? Oh, but you can never say that, So I'm saying it now, but you couldn't really say it when they would ask you about, so you're starting a business?
Yeah. Hey, I think I felt like there was still a huge part of me that was scared. And the best move I ever made was when I took it off the table. And I believed in it enough. I believed in what I was going to do that I was like, you know what? I'm done talking about this. I'm done having this conversation. That was the best thing I ever did. And now, of course, everybody wants to talk to me about it. But I think it's better to talk with your actions anyway. I mean, I tended to over verbalize everything. And that was a problem for me because it ended up being permission seeking. I was really just scared and I wanted everybody to agree with me because that would make me feel more comfortable. But, I like that idea that at some point you have to separate yourself from the conferences and the gurus and the mastermind sessions with your family and all that. And you have to sit down and do your work. And that's terrifying. Yeah. It's terrifying to actually do something and say, you know what? How about you pay me $1,000 for this? What can I do to get $1,000 from you? And that's work. It's just work.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. I mean, it's fun to cut because I don't often, most people that approach me are simply interested in the trading information. I notice generally the people
are a lot of people interested in entrepreneurship, in your audience.
I don't know exactly. I think the people that I know that are interested in entrepreneurship are the people that attempt to copy exactly what I do.
Hey, that's great.
They think that's the secret to success. You mentioned though, taking a risk and you talked about early influences. And I think, and I'll let you run with this, but the idea of taking that risk, taking that initial jump, what most people that try and caution you to not jump don't realize that if you do jump and you are wrong, unless you die, you've not failed. All you've done is learn a lesson to adjust for the next jump. Because there's not going to only be one jump. It's going to be jump.
Right. This is Seth Godin's concept of the lizard brain, right? What are you really scared of, right? We call it failing forward, or unless it results in death, dismemberment, or destitution. We're not talking about, massive catastrophe here. Really, we're talking about getting used to taking emotional risks and putting yourself out there for judgment, because your products are going to be judged. Your opinions are going to be judged if they're going to be meaningful. You're going to have collateral damage if you assert yourself in the world in any way. One of the most hated people on the planet is Tom Cruise, who is an amazingly successful artist. Why do people hate him? Well, just because he's out there. And I understand that's what it takes to be successful is you got to put yourself out there. So.
I haven't asked you how did you get the idea about, it's been primarily for nearly a decade in and out of Asia. So it's been an Asia focus for you?
Not well. So sort of. I first came here in 2001 and was blown away by Vietnam in particular. I did a Southeast Asia tour as a 19-year-old kid and just blown away by it. So it always sort of stuck in the back of my head when I was working a job. I thought, man, wouldn't it be great if I could go back there? And then I started doing manufacturing in China and Vietnam. And so there was sort of a business significance. Then I started doing internet marketing. And as you know, this is a hiring hotspot. You can come here and put up a dev shop or hire virtual assistants. And so I got involved in that community quite heavily. I went to the Philippines looking to hire people. And I mean, I imagine myself having a office full of 45 typing researchers, like, pumping out financial research or white papers. Or I thought, man, this is a great business opportunity.
They're all going to be gorgeous Vietnamese women too, of course.
This is going to be a great business opportunity. And then I just kind of came here and fell in love with the culture and the vibe. But so, yeah, I mean, I think Southeast Asia is one of the most diverse and exciting places on the planet.
I said something, I don't know where I said this, either on a post or a blog post or on my podcast, but the idea that some of the cultures in Southeast Asia, their desire to get ahead, and they're very motivated by America. They see in the TV, the movies, they see America and they want what they perceive as that success. And they're willing to do a lot to get it. They're willing to work a lot more hours. I think in Vietnam, they get 6 days off a month. They don't get 8, they get 6.
That's true.
But the point I want to bring to you, and I think you might be able to add something here, I think as the language increases in Vietnam, English, and as the internet gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and maybe at that point in time, maybe America will get rid of all bandwidth issues and get rid of broadband to protect America. But my point is that ultimately, I think that people in America are going to really have to worry about, forget manufacturing jobs alone. They're going to have to start to worry about white collar jobs. Because there's some really bright people in this area of the world. And when they master English, and many of them have already, watch out, folks. It's not going to just be reading about cars in Detroit and widgets and plastic products being made in China. It's your white collar service jobs they're coming for.
You better believe it. The jobs aren't coming back. I mean, they're gone. They've snuck out the bottom of the door. And you're seeing this on the ground here, right? As an entrepreneur, you have the imperative to not just hire the most cost-effective employee, but to optimize their location. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, a global revolution happened when Skype took the cost, what was before a multi-$1,000 a month cost, overhead cost, and took it to zero. And now you can manage distributed teams and a client roster from anywhere on the planet for $0 a month. So let's say 10, because we're adding in the ability to dial real phone numbers. That to me is a revolution that was quiet, and it's happening on the ground. I have many, many friends who've got, 20 to 30 employees, like that kind of range of companies, 5 tucked away in their homes in Manila, 5 in California at a sales support representative office. You've got all of your transactions going through a financial organization in Hong Kong. You might have a subsidiary that does investing based in Indonesia. This is micro multinationals. This is hyper globalization of small businesses, and it's happening right now. This didn't happen 10 years ago. And I think it's a dramatic trend, and it's nonlinear. So we're not going to see the same rate of change that we saw the last 20 years. And I think that's something that we just can't wrap our heads around. We have a bad time doing that. In 2006, I didn't have the sum total of human knowledge in my pocket. Now I do. So what's the impact of that on business? So I think it's again, these things that if you're reading about it in Business Week, you're 5 years too late. I mean, things like that. We're seeing these kinds of things happen here on the ground in Saigon. And I think that's this idea of hyperglobalization of small business, optimizing, for example, if you had a $3 million business in 1995, you would not have an offshore component. Now you might have 3, and you might have staff in 7 different countries. $3 million company in 1995 is a nice office block in, the Valley. So I think this is happening now.
You know, as you say that, it's interesting because I'm thinking about if I would have been in the States and had not traveled, I'd be thinking, well, that seems a little bit pie in the sky. Employees in Vietnam, employees in the Philippines. Then when you're over here, what it really comes down to, it's more like states in some ways where these borders and these sexy country names that sound very mysterious. It's not. It's just, they're just states and they're all connected to each other and they're just people and they're all connected by phone lines and everyone wants to get rich and everyone wants to get smart. And the reality is it's one big playing field. And this was the whole concept of what Tom Friedman's book was, the earth is flat or the globe is flat, whatever. And you see it on the ground here. And I just think our compatriots in the States are, as you say, they're going to be reading it about in Newsweek when the hammer starts hammering.
Well, I mean, it's just like any business. If you're as an individual, you are a business, right? There's a way that you're creating wealth for yourself. I mean, if you have a high burn, I can look at some of my competitors online. I can say, man, that's a pretty nice office you got there. And then I'm thinking, I got a better cost basis than you. So I'm more profitable than you. So that means I can reinvest in my marketing more than you. And so on and so forth. It's the same thing with employees, right? You said you're competing with everybody. So, okay. You own, in air quotes, a $450,000 house in the suburbs with, you have to make your burn is $5,000 a month or something. Now all of a sudden you got someone in Vietnam that's willing to work 6 days a week, do the exact same work, and they only need to make $1,000 a month. One upside to all this is that you're seeing it happen with Westerners. So most of my staff are Americans and I don't know the exact numbers. A lot of them live offshore. So what they'll do is they'll say, you know what? I'd love to travel. So how about you just pay me a little bit less than you pay the people that have to sit in the office in California? And so what I do is just as a general rule, I pay my location independent staff 65% of what I pay my full-time office staff. And the reason that I got the idea to do that is because I would be the number one person that would want a gig like that. I'll take 65% of the money so I could live in Singapore or so I could live here in Saigon, or maybe I could sit on a beach in Thailand, which actually one of my employees lives in Koh Tao. Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think what you're seeing is, okay, well, it goes both ways, right? It's not all downside for Americans. Now you could potentially explore the world. Because you don't have to have a house. You don't have to stay in one place. In fact, it was a mortgage that prevented my father from optimizing his career. And he should have moved to Maryland or whatever to get a job where the industry was going. But he couldn't because he was locked in to a location. And so, you're seeing, I've even heard reports that the parts of the nation with the highest homeownership rate also have the highest unemployment rate. And I don't know how but it's in this interesting idea of like, well, if you take that huge human ability to move, to be nomadic, to find opportunities, if you take that off the table, it's like tying one of your hands behind your back. So, I mean, I think it's not all downside, right? I mean, we're seeing all this opportunity. We can go get it too. As one of the advantages we have in the world is our passport. Not everybody has that. It's not so easy for a guy from India just to do visa on arrival everywhere. Well, we can just fly somewhere, get a tourist visa, and start doing our work. So I think that's the exciting part.
Coffee houses in Saigon are the best too. They really are. Let me ask you. So your podcast, tropicalmba.com.
I hope I'm not boring the crap out of your listeners, by the way. I'm just,
if they are, then they probably need to retire. Look, I don't care. See, here's the thing. Ultimately, it's about me. So I have to be interested in the topic. I have to be interested in the guest. And if I lose listeners because they were the wrong ones to begin with.
Or catch us on the next episode.
So your podcast, tropicalmba.com, if they want to go listen, that's where they can go?
Yeah.
Okay. And you are at a significant number of listens. Where are you in the total number of listens?
I actually don't know, because our counter got messed up. But I'm assuming we're getting listened to 100,000 times plus.
Well, you've crossed well over 1 million listens.
Yes. Yeah.
Something where I want to go with this too, not just giving you props on the listens. That's awesome. But the idea of listens, people look at all these crazy metrics online, people that are running businesses online, metric this, metric that. And, how many Facebook likes do I have? And I've literally got a system that when somebody asks me on Facebook to like something, I defriend them. That's my system. But I think podcast listens. If you, as an entrepreneur, to me, that motivates that out of me, because if I can, that's like, somebody is giving you their time, energy, their thoughts to listen to what's going on. It's a heck of a lot different. If they're going to listen to a 60-minute episode, it's a heck of a lot different than this little funny game of like going on Fiverr and buying likes and all kinds of funny stuff. What do you feel about this? Podcast metrics is from an entrepreneurial perspective feels a little bit meatier than some of the silly games that people play these days.
The most important blog post I ever wrote, which started my private membership group, which has 700 amazing entrepreneurs as part of it right now, had one Facebook like. And so it taught me this lesson that people talking about, gossiping about what you're doing, people liking it on Facebook or sharing it on Twitter is no measure of the kind of impact that content has. And it's interesting. Like I have a lot of thoughts about this. A lot of times the busiest people, the people that are most apt to implement your ideas in their lives, aren't the people that are messing around on social media. So it's also important, what's the profile of somebody that likes to play on Facebook all day long?
Psychotic.
In terms of psychotic.
Sorry for all you people on my Facebook that play all day long. I'm psychotic too.
I'll tell you, I think part of the reason that I was attracted to podcasting is the incredible intimacy of it. It's a galvanizing medium. People are putting you in their earbuds and they're going to the gym and they're thinking about how what you're saying might help them make the change that they want to make in their life. And, that's incredibly powerful. And so, that's why I use podcasting to change my life. It was business podcasts that when I was on my 2-hour commute, I was in the car for over 2 hours a day going to some office. Geez, talk about a burnout. Then I hired this web developer guy who would call me on Fridays and he would say, Dan, the traffic's pretty bad today. How about I just stay at home? And it was interesting because this was back in 2006. He kind of cracked my brain a little bit because I was like, wait a second. He's making money, but he's not here. It's like a very simple little, I wasn't that bright at that time. I didn't figure this out, but I started to think, wow, you don't have to have your butt in a chair in order to make income. That was amazing. And here's the second best part. You don't have to have an uncle that works at NBC in order to have a radio show. So those two things, you combine these two things, and a personal revolution for me comes about from this. This idea that I'll never have to be part of the middle class again. I'll never have to be employed again because now I see that you can create value and charge for it. It's just that simple. Seth Godin said, the gatekeepers are gone. It's true. You can go to some of the top entrepreneurs in the world and comment on their blog or tweet them directly. There are no excuses if you want to start a business nowadays. It's just a matter of getting down to work.
No excuses if you want to start a business. I think, of course, that's 100% true. I just think you have to start a business. I think you have to do something. And if starting a business means some type of art, writing, painting, I don't care. But I don't think if you're sitting out there right now and maybe you're in your 50s or 60s and you think you're somewhat set, maybe you got a good pension and whatever, everything can be changed on you in an instant. And if you're not willing, and if you're in your 20s right now, if you're in your teens or something, your 30s, how can you slog in every day? Look, there's gonna be another black swan. There's gonna be another meltdown. And if anybody just recalls 5 years ago, what happens when the stock market melts down, they send out the pink slips by the millions. So not only do you have the pink slips to be sent out by the millions when the next black swan hits, but you have the very issue that we were talking about too, which is the overseas, jobs coming overseas. The third issue, technology arbing away the need for people. Technology arbing away the need for people. There's just not going to need as many of you.
But empowering entrepreneurs to create amazing platforms with very few resources.
Yes.
There's another thing. One of my favorite podcasters, Dave Ramsey, says, your only security in life is your ability to go out and drag it home. And this is like an anti-fragile skill set because the entrepreneurial skill set does not depend on any one industry. It doesn't care. It's generic. So, okay, the valet company bombs. The valet industry goes to shit because people don't drive cars anymore or whatever. Google does that for them. Okay, fine. I'll take my entrepreneurial skill set and I'll move to an industry that is responding well to current conditions. I'll move to a place where the conditions are ripe. So this to me feels like security. And I think that's part of, it's sort of unique, right? Because you get into entrepreneurship, you're like, oh yeah, it's going to be so risky. You're going to be rolling the dice. But it turns out, wow, that was the most secure thing that I could have done.
The risky aspect is to stay, in a landscape that is, changing, like atoms splitting at a breathtaking, rate. The risk is to do nothing.
So, okay, I want to make sure that I say my piece before I get off here, because there's a lot of people probably listening to this saying, yeah, that was great for you. You're young. And I don't even know anything about starting businesses. What's that mean? I got to go get $100,000 loan or no, you don't need to do any of that. You shouldn't take a loan. You should start talking to people about what you can do for them for money. If I did X for you, would you pay me $500? What about a firm that did that? Would that be something of interest to you? All right. Are you willing to be my pilot customer? The number one reason people don't start a business isn't ideas or isn't money, or you don't need this. You can just see what's already working and create a version of that out in your marketplace. The number one reason people don't do it is because of cash constraints. So now we can dovetail this with the Saigon thing. You can live a good lifestyle here in Saigon. If you're really pushing it, you could live here for $1,000 a month. Now, if you want to live with some creature comforts, we're looking at like $2,000, $2,500 a month. So let's imagine somebody who's got $20,000, $30,000 saved up. Imagine what you could do with your life if you moved here for a year and built that business. What most people find themselves in is a cash intensive environment. They've got a mortgage, they've got insurance, they've got cars, and they need to make $5,000 a month. And what that does is it zaps your entrepreneurial opportunity. So that's my bit. I realize I'm not, this isn't a message for the wealthy. This isn't a message for the multimillionaires. This is a message for people with jobs that want to build a new kind of life. I think there's an opportunity to move someplace where your cash constraints are low and to focus on that creative energy we've been talking about and to build something that people value.
As you talk about the cash constraints, let me add one thing in there too, which is a kind of a combination of things, which is lazy. Plenty of people are lazy. Reality TV / distractions, meaning how much time are you awake per week? What do you do with your time? Maybe a healthy thing to do after listening to us today is do an inventory in your time. I don't do an inventory on my time, but I've gotten used to a routine, a rhythm, a system, a checklist. But how much time do you waste? Not you, Dan, but I mean, how much time do people waste? And that's, I'm questioning the person that wants to break out of the shell. So if you are that person that's in the dead end job or the job that just, maybe it's not dead end, maybe they're paying you a lot of money to say yes sir to an asshole every day. That still sucks.
Well, when I was in that position, I wasted a lot of time. And part of the reason is I didn't know that doing what the right things were. And I didn't know that I had the capability to change my life if I changed my habits. I felt hopeless. And so I would Twitter away time and hope for something to happen. Hope to go to the right party, to meet the right person, for my boss to say the right thing.
To get anointed.
That's exactly right. And the only one who can anoint you, of course, no one's going to give you the crown. You have to take it. And that's the opportunity. And the cool thing about the web is that these things that were once oblique, I admire your story. And I don't know if you've told your entrepreneurial story, but one of the things that you did in a world that was incredibly oblique and incredibly opaque for a young person is you literally knocked down the door and walked into the offices to figure out what was going on behind the doors. Well, now that world is available for everybody because there's people like me and you sharing themselves, and people can connect with us directly, and you can hear it from the horse's mouth. How did you do it? Now, of course, watch their feet and not always listen to their mouth, right? Watch what they're doing, not necessarily what they're saying. All that stuff applies, right? But that's the opportunity, is that the world is no longer opaque, is that you can see this stuff and you can get involved right away. I think one way to do that, speaking of Paris in the 20s and all this, is to start being around people who are doing it. I was reading Marissa Mayer's story today about how she's the, CEO of Yahoo and all this stuff now. if she weren't at Stanford, she wouldn't be the CEO of Yahoo right now. So what's your Stanford? Who's sitting around your dinner table at night? And if you can evolve that situation, when I sit around the dinner table at night, there's entrepreneurs around the table because those are the people that, we share projects and passions together. I'm not sitting there with a bunch of guys with dead end jobs that are hating life. So that evolving that situation is one way to sort of hack your, getting started doing the right things and getting different habits.
I think that it gives us a great end point, and I want to give you the opportunity to, where can we direct people? Because here we are talking about all this entrepreneurship, and you have developed a network, and I don't necessarily know if the doors are open or how it works, but, so you have developed a network of like-minded entrepreneurs and a lot of different skill sets. Because some of these folks that I've met through your network are doing work for me. So some very bright people. So how can people best reach you, Dan?
Yeah. So my passion is writing this blog. I love writing tropicalmba.com. So, if you want to connect with me or my ideas, I think just go to tropicalmba.com and check out what I'm doing.
Sounds good. Appreciate your time today. And like I said, this is one of my only interviews in person as I look out the window at the, is that the Saigon River over there?
Yeah.
And there's like we're right near downtown. And it's like,
it's absolutely beautiful
budding
place.
Skyscrapers going up. It's not like Shanghai or anything yet.
No.
But I can look over and there's this literally a couple blocks from me, what looks like virgin land by the hectare as far as you can see. And I can only
That's District 2, and I don't know if you've seen the plan for that.
I can only imagine.
It's gonna be like the next Bangkok. That's what they're
I
saying.
imagine.
Part of the charm of Saigon is it's not quite Bangkok. It's got this kind of neighborhoody, nice. And like you were saying, one of the other reasons to move here is, can you find a better cafe culture?
Yeah, you can't.
Absolutely wonderful.
You can. And we just real quick, we'll exchange some notes. So my experience, this spring, so had a chance to be all over Thailand, had a chance to be in Tokyo, which I love. I love the food in Tokyo. Big city, cool place. Was in Hong Kong. Love Hong Kong. Nice, great place. Beijing, you'd have to kind of pay me a lot of money, my friends in Beijing, to be there or shoot me, one or the other. It's a government town. It's Washington, D.C. Sorry, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Shanghai is pretty cool. Shenzhen, right across from Hong Kong. Guangzhou, I think once again, you might have to
Guangzhou is awful.
Pull my teeth out. But
Bolt
hey, clearly there's a lot of money there. You're building 100-story towers, so you guys are kicking butt. I get it. But
a lot of people making a lot of money there. A lot of Westerners too. I mean, it's a land of opportunity for sure.
But all that setup was just to say that there is something, now if you're a male, beyond just quite a few very attractive women, Saigon has this charm. It has this interesting, I can't put my finger on it exactly.
It's bohemian. There's something arty about it. There's something, there's a certain fundamental class to the Vietnamese culture. See, Vietnamese is fundamentally derived from Chinese culture, but they're the underdogs. There's an elegance to the way things are done here that you don't see in China. And there's a straightforwardness to the culture that I like. There's a no BS kind of quality to it, but they're also extremely accommodating and friendly people. So, but yeah, I do feel that it's bohemian here. You can afford to be creative here. You can afford to live in a nice loft in the center of town. Maybe when you go out with a group of college kids at a local pub, they're not going to be going to an hour outside of town. They're going to be living maybe around that pub. So it's still a little bit bohemian. It's still affordable. And I think that makes a great feel here. Yeah. I mean, if you live in Hong Kong, if you want to live in a good neighborhood, all of your neighbors are going to be bankers. And those are guys who got it all figured out. Well, who wants to hang around with a bunch of guys that got it all figured out? That's no fun.
They're boring. My guest today has been Dan Andrews. You can find out more about him at tropicalmba.com. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.